Erie County executive, and it looks like it will be a heated contest. County Comptroller Mark Poloncarz, a Democrat, officially kicked off his campaign this weekend. He's running against the incumbent Republican, Chris Collins, who has been sounding lately a lot like a gubernatorial contender, but he says he's not running so far. The two Western New York politicians have clashed over several issues in the past, and neither of them wasted any time in starting the attacks now that they are officially opponents. Joining me now to discuss his campaign is the Comptroller himself, Mr. Poloncarz. Thanks very much for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here, Liz.
So I'd like to ask you just right off the bat about a comment that you made during one of your speeches. You made a couple during the weekend, and you said that you didn't grow up with a silver spoon in your mouth. As the son of a steelworker and a nurse, it was a steel spoon. You know, it seems to me, obviously, that you're talking about a guy who has a business background, not a political background before he was first elected. That's obviously Chris Collins. But it sounds a little like class warfare to me.
Well, I have a business background myself. I was an attorney in the private sector for almost a decade before I ran for comptroller. But yes, I come from blue-collar roots, and I'm proud of that. My father was a steel worker at Bethlehem Steel for over 30 years. My mother raised us, my younger two brothers and I, and then she went back to school and became a nurse. And they taught me what I needed to learn and to get by, that you have to work with others, you have to push for your beliefs, and that only by working together can we create a better community. And sometimes I think Chris forgets that because he was elected to serve the people, but what he's done the last few years is do nothing but rule over the people by executive fiat.
Are we going to see...
He talks about how he...
Wait, before you go on, just excuse me for 1 second. Are we going to see, you know, this is sort of a little bit of a national movement in the Democratic Party, this kind of, are we going to see in your campaign more of a labor-based, urban-based agenda with also, you know, this idea that sort of anti-rich, anti-Wall Street versus, obviously, as you just put it, blue-collar?
Well, I wouldn't go that way because I think my message of what I've done as comptroller of saving tax dollars resonates across the entire county, urban, suburban, and rural. And that's one of the things that Chris Collins has done is he's been very divisive. He's pitted urban versus suburban while completely neglecting the needs of our rural constituents. And what I talked about when I announced my candidacy on Saturday in front of my hometown library in Lackawanna, and then we traveled to 5 other areas across the county, is that you need a county executive who represents all of us, not like Chris Collins is, who just is representing the select few. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. I think it's fair to say I'm going to have the support of the blue-collar and labor community in Western New York. Chris Collins may have the support of some big businessmen, but I'd rather have the support of the people I grew up with than those in the country club.
Well, and the Conservative Party, right? I mean, there is a history in Erie County, not necessarily in the controllers in the county executive race recently, but in, for example, state Senate races where the Conservatives had endorsed Democrats, even though that seems weird to people in other parts of the state. But the Conservatives got on early with Chris Collins, and so they created sort of a coalition there.
Well, they did get on early with Chris Collins, but I'll note for the record that the Conservative Party in Erie County endorsed his opponent last time, and Chris Collins soundly trounced his opponent. So just having the Conservative Party line doesn't guarantee you anything in Erie County. You know,
the enrollment actually in Erie County is quite interesting. Even though you've had a succession of Republican county executives, it's 314,000 Democrats to 166,000 Republicans. I mean, to people who are, for example, watching from the Hudson Valley, this seems like a no-brainer. I mean, what is it about Erie County that the county has been unable to elect Democrats to this particular countywide position?
Well, I think in the past, unfortunately, in Erie County, the Democrats have fought amongst each other when they should be united against the common goal, which is electing good Democrats. We've had numerous primaries in the past. In 2007, there were 4 candidates that ran for county executive last time. It doesn't appear there's going to be a primary this time, as Democrats are united behind my message of returning inclusive government back to the people of Erie County. And that's why I'm looking forward to this race, because I feel confident with the support I'm getting in the community from the Democratic Party, from the Working Families Party, and I feel very good about getting the Independence Party support that I am going to win this election in the fall. And that always hasn't happened in the past because Democrats here have a tendency to fight.
Well, Democrats everywhere have a tendency to fight. That's sort of the nature of the Democratic. That's what the circular firing squad's all about. I mean, but the thing is, though, you weren't necessarily the first choice. Or on the early outset, people talked a lot about Kathy Hochul, who, of course, we know she's running for Congress now, and she just recently has told me that she was not going to get into the Erie County executive's race, even though there were many people who hoped she would. I mean, do you feel like second fiddle to her, or you feel strong that everyone's behind you at this point?
No, I don't feel second fiddle. As comptroller for the last 5 years, I was elected during the worst fiscal crisis that Erie County ever had. I think I have a better understanding of the finances of Erie County than anybody, including Chris Collins. I have a better understanding of this community than Chris Collins. Chris Collins just announced on the day of my announcement that Erie County was doing great except for the cities and that all 25 towns grew in population. Well, and in fact, if you talk to 11 supervisors in these towns, even in the rural areas, they lost population. He's out of touch with the voters. He's out of touch with the people of Erie County. He raised taxes, cut services, and at the same time he did that, he actually gave raises to his highest level employees. He went out and said, I can't afford to pay for librarians and probation officers and correction officers and even rodent control officers, but I can give a $50,000 raise to my county attorney. That shows me someone who's completely out of touch with what's going on in Erie County and what the services that are required.
Let me just, I want to play you a little bit of a piece of an interview that I just recently did with the county executive because, as I mentioned, he's been sounding a lot like a statewide candidate. He was a statewide candidate at one point, although he did eventually drop out at the governor's race. Let's just take a look at what he had to say.
He's still spending like a Democrat, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term. I'm just saying he is continuing to spend. While he has stopped the growth in spending, he's simply pushed those mandates down on the colleges and the schools especially.
Okay, well, the he there is Governor Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, like yourself, of course. First, I'd like you to respond to that, but also, are you a supporter of Andrew Cuomo's budget, which was fiscally conservative, and many Democrats were not supportive, upset, for example, that he didn't extend the millionaire's tax? And also, are you worried about mandate relief?
Well, first off, I am supporting Governor Cuomo's budget. I've worked with the governor, especially when he was Attorney General, with regards to reducing special taxing districts, to eliminating trying to ensure that property taxes don't rise. It doesn't surprise me that the county executive says that. He ran for governor last year. He conveniently forgets it. And but for his own mistakes, he would have, in all likelihood, been the Republican candidate. Carl Palladino, if you remember, had actually endorsed Chris Collins for governor, so Carl wouldn't even have run. I fully expect that if Chris Collins were to be reelected, which I'm going to assure that he's not, that he would run for governor because that's his ultimate prize.
Are you going to make
Erie County anymore?
I'm sorry, we're almost out of time. I just want to ask you really quickly, are you going to make an issue of Carl Palladino's endorsement of Chris Collins?
Carl endorsed Chris. I'm not surprised because Chris endorsed Carl after Chris had dropped out of the race.
Right.
I'm going to talk to the voters of Erie County about what matters to them, and truthfully, it's not who does the endorsements, it's how their pocketbooks are. And what we need is a county executive who measures the value of the economy and the strength of the economy, not by the size of his bank account, but by whether people are making ends meet. And that's what not Chris Collins is doing, but what I will do.
Mr. Poloncarz, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank you very much for being with us because it looks like this is going to be a lively one, so we're going to be keeping tabs on it. Thank you.
It's going to be a good year. Thank you, Liz.